are y'all? Happy Thursday. We're a smidge late. Sorry. I'm like, this is all right. All right. I hope y'all are drinking wine because I'm still having dry-ish January and I'm drinking water. And we're going to be talking about Barbie and white feminism. Because you know what? I have some thoughts as usual. Hold on. Is my hair crooked? I think I made it more crooked. Oh, okay. Here we go. Also, we just had a Patreon live stream about Oprah with Julesy. So go ahead and check that out if you're on Patreon. It was a very interesting conversation about Oprah, about the effects of the talented 10th mentality, and why it doesn't really serve everybody as a whole. So let's hop right into this. This is going to be our agenda. We are going to be talking about Barbie and the Oscars. I realized, I was like, the letters are a little small. Should use bigger font. Barbie and the Oscars. Why do people feel like Barbie was snubbed when Barbie was nominated for 8 Oscars? Which is interesting. We're going to talk about that. Barbie and Women's Studies 101, aka they would never allow the Barbie movie to be played in a women's studies course. And we're going to get into that. As somebody who did enjoy the movie, Barbie is not a feminist manifesto. And specifically, I have one specific bone to pick with the movie, which is y'all really had Barbie out here apologizing to Ken. Wild. All right. And then we are going to get into the overshadowing of America Ferrera, who is nominated in the Barbie movie, and Lilly Gladstone, who is nominated for Best Actress. And specifically, we are going to talk about the women suffering and intersectionality. As you can see on the screen, it's too early in the video. So by the time I get to that part of the video, the algorithm will allow me to say it. All right, and we're going to pull up a map and we are going to get into, we really need to put the pom pom hats back on because we are losing rights in this country. And I need us to attack the loss of our rights, our reproductive rights, for anybody who supports women and femmes with the same gusto that people are attacking the Academy. I need us to do that. All right, so let's get into it. So Barbie and the Oscars. Also, let me triple check. It should, because I was just doing a live stream. I think everything should be connected already. Let me just double check that the mic is on. Oh, okay, the mic is on. All right. So this is from NPR, which NPR had an article which stated Barbie receives 8 Oscar nomination, but was that enough? Because Kenough is one of the jokes in the Barbie movie with Just Ken. All right. So it should be noted that despite people feeling that there's a snafu, a snub, Barbie received 8 Oscar nominations on Tuesday morning, which include Best Picture. Ryan Gosling, who is Just Ken, is nominated for Best Supporting Actor. America Ferrera for Best Supporting Actress. Gloria is truly the heroine of this movie. And the fact that people are letting the heroine be overshadowed without Gloria, which we'll get into Gloria's character, without Gloria saving Barbie in Barbie Land, what would have become of them? Let's be honest. Barbie was also nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay, Costume Design, and Production Design. Now, as you can see as well, those are not 8, but according to NPR, there are 8. So there are 2 others that they didn't list. The costume design in Barbie is phenomenal. As somebody who loves to see people with their right shade of pink on, I grew up not a big fan of pink. Obviously, I wear lots of pink now because pink looks good on brown skin. When you find your right shade of pink, you just feel a little more, pizzazz, a little more powerful, a little more like, I'm going to do what I want to do with myself. Pink is great. There was an article that stated they used so much pink on the Barbie set that they had to go and source it from other places because they had bought up all the pink in the area. The dedication to the set design, the costume design, phenomenal. It earned its Oscar. The dedication of America Ferrera as Gloria in that monologue, which we're going to go through, earned that as well. There are 8 nominations. And people are acting that their Barbie didn't get anything. And that, particularly during these times when, in the words of Kourtney Kardashian, people are dying, Kim, is a wild thing to watch all these people get on the internet and raise their blood pressure. Fascinating. So I would like to know, as somebody who has been following Margot Robbie's career, Margot Robbie's a phenomenal actress. And if you want to see a movie that is truly to its core, not just, Mattel with a side of feminism, but full on, let's get into the nitty gritty. Let's look at the intersections of class and particularly how poor white people are treated. I recommend you watch 2017's I, Tonya. This is an excellent, phenomenal film that Margot Robbie was nominated for an Oscar for Best Actress in. When I tell you she acted her behind off, and the behind was allegedly a little bit bigger in the film because the film is based off of Tonya Harding. If you were not in the 90s obsessed ice figure skating phase, that's all right. I'll fill you in. Tonya Harding, who has now become America's most hated, most misunderstood, most maligned figure skater, was a brilliant figure skater. She was from literally the wrong side of the track. She was a poor white young woman. She usually in figure skating is very expensive. So you have upper middle class, mostly white women, white people participating in figure skating. Tonya Harding did not come from that background. She was great. She also happened to weigh a little bit more than her counterparts. And by a little bit more, we're talking about white women ideal aesthetics in the United States. So she was like maybe an 8 in terms of sizing. She was never big. They treated her as if, she was this grotesque person. She was not. Nancy Kerrigan was her rival. Nancy Kerrigan gave off the feeling of old money, well-bred, beautiful, elegant, long, soft-spoken. I love them both growing up. Unfortunately, Tonya Harding fell in with the wrong crowd. If you watch the movie, it's very fascinating. Her mother was a lot of things. Her mother, with her rough life, was a lot of things. She, according to the court documents, colluded with her boyfriend to break Nancy Kerrigan's legs. It was the drama of the day. It was a wild thing to see. They literally assaulted Nancy Kerrigan. It was wild. It was crazy. The entire I, Tonya movie focuses on the situation and Nancy Kerrigan's upbringing, how she's treated in figure skating from her lens, which that story has never been told. Tonya Harding then went on after, I think she served a prison sentence, if I remember correctly. I can't remember right now. After she came out, or after some time had passed, she then became a pro wrestler. Her life never was the same. And she most famously is remembered as participating in an assault against Nancy Kerrigan versus the fact that she was, before all this happened, her life went into commotion, that she was a very esteemed and very great figure skater. So, and shout out to Sonia Benali, who was my favorite. She was a figure skater for France. She was a black woman, she's still alive. And she got disqualified from the Winter Olympics that year because she was so good. She was like, y'all are boring. She was doing backflips on the ice, to which figure skating is very strict, very prim and proper, a certain way. They were like, absolutely not, girl. It's dangerous, but more so, we don't want to do new inventive things. And they disqualified her. So very, very interesting. Highly recommend if you want to see a movie that talks about how idealized patriarchy and pushing women, particularly white women of the time, into a very narrow form of what is allowed to be beautiful and what's acceptable beauty, and also looking at class, I recommend I, Tonya. It's a great movie. It's one of the best movies I've seen. And not just because I loved figure skating, because the acting between Margot Robbie and the actress who played her mother, which let me make sure I get everybody's name right, Allison Janney. Woo! Allison Janney in that movie playing Tonya Harding's mother, a real piece of work. Excellent ass acting. They deserved all the awards and accolades for that. When we're talking, not to get on an Oscars high horse, because one, the Oscars love to try people at all times. So there's an argument to be made of why do we need this one small group of people in the Academy to say like, hey, I've done a good job. And the other side of that is, hey, when I've put all my time, hard work, and energy, I do want to be recognized by my peers. I can understand that. Oh, excuse me. Barbie, again, has 8 nominations. What people are being very loudly disgruntled online are that Margot Robbie did not receive a Best Actress nomination, and Greta Gerwig, who is the director, did not receive a Best Director nomination. Greta Gerwig also was nominated for Best Director a few years back before the pandemic for Lady Bird. Great coming of age film as well. Again, we are getting costume design, we're getting supporting actress, supporting actor. The way that Barbie is written, Barbie is not really the heroine. The heroine in the movie is Gloria. Gloria is saving everybody. Gloria is saving herself. Gloria is saving her daughter. Gloria is saving Barbie. Gloria is getting to relive her childhood. Gloria is the unsung hero in the whole movie. So I think it's really interesting that people are attached to the fact that, oh, 8 is not enough. And also, one of the disingenuous things that's happening with this snub conversation is people are really out here. Oh, what about our representation? Barbie is a movie for all of us. Getting 8 nominations is showing that the representation was well received. And while I did enjoy the Barbie movie, I watched it wearing my pussy pink as well during matinee. Barbie is introducing maybe some feminist topics. I'll give it that. Barbie is not a feminist manifesto. Barbie is a Mattel ad with some feminist flair into it. Specifically, when Barbie and Ken, also spoiler, I'm sure you've probably seen it by now if you're watching this video, when Barbie and Ken go to the real world, they're trying to figure out what's going on. Barbie is not feeling like Barbie. Her feet have lost the arches. She's freaking out. Ken decides to accompany her to the real world. She doesn't want Ken to go, by the way. Ken is giving soft stalker throughout the whole time. Nobody ever addresses that. It's interesting. They go to the real world. Ken is in a library. Ken finds books on patriarchy. Ken is like, oh, patriarchy says if I'm a strong man with muscles, that I'm deserving of all these things. I could be a land-owning man. Whoa, patriarchy is for me. Ken is like having an epiphany that patriarchy is going to change his life, and Barbie's going to look at him and he can own everything. Ken is on his merry patriarchal way. Barbie continues on in the real world. She meets Gloria. She meets Gloria's daughter. She goes, and the people, the executives from Mattel, all men, Will Ferrell, they're chasing her around, all of that. When Barbie gets back to Barbie Land, Barbie comes to find out that Ken has spread patriarchy everywhere. It was a real missed opportunity if we really wanted to have a feminist manifesto, because not only has Ken spread patriarchy to the other Kens, Ken has spread patriarchy somehow to the other Barbies. Women participate in patriarchy as a way, wrongfully, to assume that, hey, if I build up your ego and I do all this, I will get some level of safety. If I'm patriarchy adjacent, okay, cool. I can walk down the street at night with safety with you, because somebody will see a man and they will leave me alone, versus instead attacking the system of, I should be allowed to walk down the street by myself. Why should you be attacking anybody? What is the purpose of this? The way it was explained in Barbie was, oh, they didn't have any natural defenses to patriarchy because they'd never seen it. That didn't make any sense. In Barbie, all of the Barbies, the women, own all the houses. They are the judiciary. Issa Rae is the president. She's President Barbie. They have all the, there's no money really in Barbie. But if there was money, they have all the money. They have everything. They have no need to participate in patriarchy. They would get nothing out of patriarchy. And it's just explained away like, oh, it'll be fun. I'm like, they all own their own house. They have no need for anything that patriarchy is allegedly supposed to give them by attaching themselves to patriarchy. Didn't make any sense. The second part is when Barbie finally has this big conversation with Ken. Ken has A, committed B and E, breaking and entering. Ken has not only entered Barbie's house, Ken has stolen Barbie's house. Ken is a squatter. He is a squatter with bad fur on, and he's like, oh, I'm dressing myself now, and this is how I look. I'm doing what I want to do. Again, back to the soft stalking. The entire movie that's going on, Ken is wanting to spend more and more time with Barbie, and Barbie's like, I'm good. I'm having a sleepover like I always do with my girlfriends. You don't need to come. It's okay. Barbie then apologizes to Ken. Ken has broken into her house. Ken has stolen her house. Ken has stolen all of Barbie land, and somehow it's Barbie's fault. Barbie's like, you know what, Ken, I'm sorry. I should have listened to your needs. The ones that Ken didn't clearly communicate? What? It is absurd. That I'm glad I was in the matinee, so there were only a few other people in there because I audibly gasped when she was sitting there apologizing to Ken. That she was being the bigger person, being like, Ken, I see you, I hear you, you just wanted to feel valued. Ken needed some consequences. And then maybe, we the apology was just wild. They could have had an adult conversation. This is also a fictional movie, but to say that this is a feminist manifesto when you have the man did everything wrong in the movie and you have the protagonist apologizing to him is bonkers to me. It never sat well. It makes no sense. And I'm going to skip forward really quick before we talk about the overshadowing of America Ferrera and Lilly Gladstone. I want to talk about America Ferrera, who plays Gloria. She is the in real life mom who loved Barbie as a kid. Her daughter's not really into Barbie. Her daughter's a tween, so she's going through that phase, etc. And she's like so excited to help Barbie. She gives this beautiful speech when she gets to Barbie Land. And one of the things in the speech I thought was so ironic that you have Gloria give this speech before Barbie apologizes to Ken and basically showing like, you know what, we all can't get on the feminist train because some of y'all think you're on the train and I don't know what you're doing. So part of her speech, Gloria states, you have to answer for men's bad behavior, which is insane. But if you point that out, you're accused of complaining. You're supposed to stay pretty for men, but not so pretty that you tempt them too much or that you threaten other women because you're supposed to be a part of the sisterhood. So we acknowledge that it's insane to apologize for men's behavior. But then 10 minutes later, maybe 15 minutes later in the movie, Barbie is apologizing to Ken for Ken's literal theft of her home. But some of the white feminist brigade want to be like, oh, you see, this is proving that we do not have enough representation. We're not getting what we want. And this was my feminist movie. If your feminist ideals and your beliefs are solely based on you want the same trinkets and applause and amounts of money as white men, that's not freeing you, cis trend. Freedom is not finding you. You will girl boss your way into being the only one on the top. And what is happening to your actual rights? Not a blood clot thing. Because you're too busy trying to be like, well, winning for Barbie and winning for me in this version of feminism, it's just about making sure I get the same things as just Ken. What is that going to do for anybody? I really want to know. I really would like to know. And honestly, it takes away from the fact that we should really have celebrated and championed the hero in the movie who got her nomination, which is America Ferrera. So this is America Ferrera as the mother, as Gloria, who America Ferrera represents all the things of a woman trying to find her place in the world, somebody who's downtrodden at work. She works for all of these men who treat her bad. She is the receptionist at Barbie Co., Barbie Limited. I forgot which corporate structure Mattel decided to use in the movie. They ignore her. She has all these great ideas. She's a great mom. You know, her daughter is going through her phase. They don't really mention her husband too much, so you don't know if he's supportive or not supportive. So much nuance and needed things that everyday regular women of all complexions could see themselves in Gloria. But instead, we are making hullabaloo about why Margot Robbie, who for the most part, it's like, girl, I got my nomination and my cash because they got nominated for Best Picture. Margot Robbie is a producer. There aren't that many women producers. It took her, according to a few interviews, 8 years for her to get Mattel to sign off on this project. That is a huge accomplishment. And people are just like, oh, it's not enough. It's not enough, girl, because we needed all the things. That's kind of a slap in the face. If I went and bugged one of the most famous, very, misogynistic corporations for 8 years to get something made, and people are like, you needed more. You needed more so I could feel seen. I would be very annoyed. I would be a little irritated. Also, America Ferrera represents the one, I would say, character who is not a white woman in the movie that actually has a speaking role, that has depth. Issa Rae, love to see it. I'm so glad Issa Rae got to be president, but we didn't see anything that President Barbie got to do. We didn't see, the empowerment of President Barbie. She's there. And also, for what it's worth, people were pointing out that it didn't seem that she was paid very well, which we won't get into that right now. Is very, very interesting. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is this beautiful monologue by Gloria. So in this monologue, I think this was truly, if we're going to have a feminist moment in the movie, this was the feminist moment. This was, hey, we should all stand behind this. And it goes to show that while women, who are not white, while you have Black women, Asian women, Latina women, and femmes, while we are supposed to see ourselves apparently in stories of white women, and often we do because that's the representation that we're allowed to have, people are not giving that same reciprocity to non-white women, because this was a beautiful monologue. And if, Barbie wouldn't come after me, I would just play it for y'all, but we'll read part of it. It is literally impossible to be a woman. You are so beautiful and so smart. And mind you, she's talking to Barbie. And it kills me that you don't think you're good enough. Like we have to always be extraordinary, but somehow we're always doing it wrong. You have to be thin, but not too thin. And you can never say you want to be thin. You have to say you want to be healthy, but you have to be thin. Emphasis on these are idealized standards that are pushed on white women and then pushed on the rest of us as well. You have to have money, but you can't ask for money because that's crass. You have to be a boss, but you can't be mean. You have to lead, but you can't squash other people's ideas. You're supposed to love being a mother, but you don't talk about your kids all the damn time. You have to be a career woman, but you always have to be looking out for other people. You have to answer for men's bad behavior. I'll just read this again so it's in totality, which is insane. But if you point that out, you're accused of complaining. You're supposed to stay pretty for men, but not so pretty that you tempt them too much or that you threaten other women because you're supposed to be a part of the sisterhood. But always stand out and always be grateful, but never forget that the system is rigged. So find a way to acknowledge that, but also always be grateful. Particularly always be grateful, I would say, extends particularly to Black and Latina women. When you get anywhere, say thank you. Say thank you that they let you know you're behind up in here. That's a little too much size is too big, according to this very idealized standards of thinness, and your mouth that's a little too loud. Be grateful. Be grateful that corporate even hired you. How many times you sit in meetings, people will talk over you, and it's like, well, at least you get to be at the room. Be at the room silent. Be at the room where you're taking my ideas. What is the purpose of this? I'm just so tired of watching myself and every single other woman tie herself into knots so that people will like us. And if all of that is also true for a doll just representing women, then I don't even know. And that was the most beautiful part of the entire movie. Truthfully. And I think what's really interesting when America Ferrera's character Gloria says that monologue, she's talking to Barbie. Barbie's played by Margot Robbie, tall, thin, objectively very beautiful woman by anybody's standards. And in that, she is also relaying the point of intersectionality of certain of these things apply to her differently because she is a Latina, which in the movie, it is vaguely referenced because her daughter speaks to her in Spanish and the father is not Hispanic because he says that he can't understand. And to which the daughter's like, you've been married to mom all these years. Why are you not learning? Which that was shade. And I was like, this is very interesting. Implying to me as somebody who watches these things, how I hate the term people of color. Y'all know how I feel about this. Why we can't all say all the different things. Why Black, Asian, Indigenous, and Hispanic people in this country, we're forced to assimilate, but people do not assimilate back. They don't bother to learn about our culture, our heritage. You're going to be married to somebody for 15 years, shouldn't you? A little bit, to where at least you're understanding the chisme. I'm just wondering. The other noted person right now who's not from the Barbie movie, but who received a nomination for Best Actress, which is an historic nomination for Best Actress, is Lily Gladstone. And one of the, I would say, very sad truths about Lily Gladstone and her nomination is because people are up in arms again that Margot Robbie and Greta Gerwig did not receive their specific individual Oscar nominations. Barbie as a whole, which they are both producers on Barbie as a whole, so they are receiving nominations, is completely overshadowing Lily Gladstone. So this is from Entertainment Weekly. With this nomination, you make history as the first Indigenous American actress to be nominated in this category, which is Best Actress. What's your reaction to a milestone like that? It's incredible, and a huge part of me just wants to say that it shouldn't have been me. This should have happened so much longer ago. I shared the screen in this film with Tantu Cardinal, who's from Canada, but that's a border that crosses a lot of us. I grew up watching performances from Sheila Taosi, who I was lucky enough to share the stage with at one point in my career. Her work in Thunderheart, I feel like after that, she should have been in every film and nominated for everything. There's no actress alive that surpasses Sheila's talent. She's one of the true greats. And you rarely, if ever, get representation for Indigenous women in film and TV. We get lots of white women representation. Some of it great, some of it like, we could have lived without that. That's fine. Rarely are you seeing a movie that features Indigenous women, that centers an Indigenous woman's plight, particularly a historical piece that is bringing information, probably new knowledge to a lot of people, because we're not taught in American school about Indigenous people, about the Osage people specifically the movie is about. And here you have people just, what about me? What about you? It doesn't have to be about you all the time. And again, I'm going to keep referencing the 8 nominations because it's really as if Barbie got 0, how loud people are being. It's a little bit wild. Okay, one of the things I was like, you know what? I have to throw this in here because I watched this last week. I was like, you know what? I finally want to watch this, which was Oppenheimer. Barbieheimer was what was coined because Barbie and Oppenheimer came out on the same day. Oppenheimer is an attempt to humanize and give some empathy to a very problematic figure in human history. And one of the things that was so immediately stood out to me was in the movie, it centers on Dr. Oppenheimer, and how he was the lead scientist on the Manhattan Project, which created, can we say that word? I mean, maybe, which created the bomb. Me and the algorithm, I'm so tepid about it these days, to be honest. In that Hiroshima and Nagasaki killed hundreds of thousands of people. One of the things when you watch the movie, they're like, okay, we have to do this in secret. It's World War II. We don't want anybody to know what we're doing. Don't worry. I know a town where nobody lives in New Mexico, and we can go to this town where nobody lives, and we're going to build a town because nobody lives here, and we're going to invite all these scientists, and we're going to build this weapon of mass destruction. That is one seemingly small detail in the movie that is a very large lie. So this is from NYU's The Latinx Project. On November 16th, 1942, Oppenheimer and Groves visited Los Alamos, and this is in New Mexico. It was snowing that day. In addition to the Los Alamos Ranch School for Boys that was in Los Alamos, the team also visited over 3 dozen farms belonging to Mexican Americans. They decided that the land could easily be acquired. The movie said nobody lived there, and that turned out to be a lie. My great-grandparents, Jose Maria and Delfina Serna, owned what later became called Tract E3 on the Pajarito Plateau, 62.5 acres that they farmed and ranched when the government evicted them in 1943 through the process of eminent domain. Eminent domain is when the government comes and like, you know what? I know you live here, but I need this land, and I need this land for whatever reason, and it's going to cause economic prosperity, or I don't even have to tell you, so I'm going to give you pennies on the dollar for your land. This is continuing to this day. You see this happen in a lot of Black neighborhoods throughout the United States, where eminent domain is literally used to build highways through Black neighborhoods. All right. Jose Maria was a subsistence farmer, and he sold or traded his harvest in the neighboring towns of Española and Santa Fe. When I interviewed my tia Ruby, my grandma Bernadita's sister, in 2007, she told me how the family would travel by carro de bestia, horse-drawn wagon from Los Alamos to Santa Fe Indian School for her dad to sell and trade his crops. She told me they would heat rocks in a fire and wrap them up in blankets to keep their feet warm. They would stop in Tesusque to have lunch, of which she fondly remembered the homemade cheese before continuing to their destination. Not only were there Mexican-American people living here, there were also indigenous people living here. And the people that refused to give up their land, many of them were then disabused of their land. They took it anyway. The government stole the land. And then because these are farmers, they have no way to make a living. According to some historians, they force some of these men into what can be viewed as forced labor, to which they are working with nuclear chemicals. Huge amounts of cancer, huge amounts of medical issues afterwards, etc. When you watch Oppenheimer, you're seeing a very whitewashed version of history, which is like, there's only scientists here, and these scientists, everything is protected in the military and nobody else. That's not who was testing these weapons of mass destruction, and that's not who they were testing these weapons of mass destruction on. Yeah. So I didn't do a good job of this last time, but let's take a second and pause, and we'll read some comments, and then we'll keep going. I agree. Powerpuff Girl. In high school, we barely learned about Indigenous history. The most we got was a paragraph on the Trail of Tears. And it's interesting the way that even the little bit of Indigenous history is taught in most American schools. It's, oh, this awful thing happened and we did this awful thing, but don't worry, we're sorry. And those people don't exist anymore. Yes, they do. They are still here. They still deserve their money, and they deserve the right to self-governance on their land. And we're seeing this particularly in the current genocide that is going on. Europeans and many of their descendants have always taken over folks' land and pretend like those folks weren't already inhabiting it. This is worldwide. Colonization is a worldwide issue. It is worldwide. Of sometimes when you see, because we're going to talk about Gaza in a minute, and how women and children and men are being treated in Gaza is a feminist issue. And specifically, you have lots of misinformation, purposeful misinformation literature saying, there was nobody over there. We just arrived and, they just left and they weren't there. That's not true. That has never been true. Because you refuse to see a people as a people doesn't mean they're not there. All right. Copious Cat. I watched it because I needed to take notes on the historical depiction of a horrible occurrence adjacent to military history. Lived in Japan, and I watched it because y'all know some white people stay lying. And unfortunately, some do. And I would hope for people to disabuse themselves of the need to continue to lie. And this is also why it's very important to push back on a lot of these book bans, because if the information about what actually occurred throughout history is in books, and books are being banned, people are now getting their information, and have been for a while, getting their information through media, which is, wow, this is a movie that cost over $100 million to make. It has all these acclaimed actors. The main actor is Thomas Shelby, OBE, from, how am I forgetting the name of that show? I really enjoyed that show. It's a British show. I'm sure y'all have watched it. Y'all will tell me what it is. And the whole purpose of period pieces is to pique your interest in the time and in the subject matter for you to then do the research, not to take it as fact. And I think one of the largest problems now is because media literacy is so low, people are like, oh, well, this is well researched, this is well produced, they're showing historical accounts, it must be true. And I'm like, This is a complete whitewashing of history. So that way, the American government and likely whatever foundation his descendants have poured money into are like, you know what? This is a complex man. People should understand him. Certain things don't need to be understood. Okay. Peaky Blinders. Thank you. Great show. Highly recommend. All right. Now, I've noticed about 30 minutes in, they'll let me say what I need to say. So one of the disheartening things that is currently going on right now is there's a genocide occurring in Gaza of Palestinians. Over 25,000 people have been murdered. 70% of those people are women and children. This is still occurring regardless of what Joseph Robinette Biden and his team want to put out into the media. It is still occurring as we speak. And women suffering, any women suffering across the world, is an intersectional feminist issue, particularly over, I believe, I think the number is 20,000. It might be less. I will have to I looked at it earlier and I can't remember. A few thousand children have been born into what is literally a hellscape of where people used to live in their home, albeit in a home they were not free to have mobility in their own land from, to where they are now being forced to live in tents. It is unsanitary. There are no sanitary pads. There's barely running water. And you are not seeing the white feminists pick up the pitchforks for that. And that's crazy. That's really, really wild that we are now in a state where people are more mad about their fictional toy character being snubbed than an actual dehumanization of women that are more similar to you and are just trying to live their life. Women are giving birth without epidurals, which some people can, but not in that state. People are having surgery. Children are having amputations without any anesthesia. This is a huge issue. And if you're going to call yourself a feminist and pretend to be a feminist, then you have to care about women across the world and not even, what I find very interesting is the current version of, I don't even know what to call it anymore, because y'all allegedly left girl boss feminism in the past and it's still giving girl boss feminism, is that version of feminism doesn't even help the average white woman. It's helping no one. It's doing nothing. And I wanted to include a picture of Bisan, who is still there, who is still rightfully, as it is her right, trying to hold on to her homeland, and how incredibly disheartening it has been to see her point out intersexual feminism day after day over, I believe we are on day 111 or 112, and for it to fall on deaf ears of people thinking like, that's just feminism over there. And also, Columbia University is now being investigated because there is an allegation that chemical weapons were used on pro-Palestinian students during a protest. This is on American soil. So thinking that, it's just over there, it doesn't have anything to do with me, is short-sighted, silly, and unproductive. And with that, I do have a request. Please, can we get the pom-pom hats back out, the ones that people like to wear to the Women's March, and actually do some things, please and thanks, and not just march around with the pussy pink on our head and nothing actually gets changed. Because currently in the United States, we are losing rights as well. So to be so riled up about Barbie, but not be riled up that you might live in the state of Texas, the state of Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, where they are currently, you're limited to no abortion rights, where they're currently attacking Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood gives more to the community than just access to abortion. Planned Parenthood gives you access to an OBGYN, a nurse practitioner, general health. Planned Parenthood is the provider of choice for many impoverished people or people that live with a family that they don't feel comfortable telling them their business. People are getting mammograms at Planned Parenthood. So again, this version of we're yelling for Barbie feminism, what is that doing for the young white woman that lives in Texas? Not a blood clot thing. Nothing. And to highlight that, I would like to show y'all a map. This is a map from the Center for Reproductive Rights. And in the, I think it's like a maroon brown, the maroon red brown, that is where abortion access is illegal. This has gotten much more dire since the overturning of Roe v. Wade. As you can see, it's a lot of maroon brownish. On here, we have Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee. Oh, this is testing my geography skills. Missouri. I said Missouri already. What's on top of Tennessee? Kentucky, Indiana, West Virginia, North and South Dakota, and Idaho. Oop, I know all my states. Good for me. Shout out to my elementary history teacher. I think our history also includes geography. Then you'll see with hostile is in like the burnt orange. Hostile, we have another handful of states, which means it's coming for you too. We have Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Iowa, Nebraska, Colorado, Utah, Arizona. If those hostile states all make abortion illegal as well, those hostile states, as you can see, a lot of them are bordering states where it is already illegal. Currently, right now, we've seen with the woman in Texas where when people don't have access, they're trying to go to neighboring states to get the access that they need. If all the states around you all of a sudden go from hostile to illegal, where are you going to go? Particularly if you do not have the money to get on one of these raggedy planes, which Boeing is a conversation we need to have, because that is what happens when corporations teeth up all the money and don't actually input the money back into the product. Because why is Windows falling off a plane? But I digress. Back to this. Then you have in terms of not protected, as in neither here nor there. We don't know if we're hostile, but we don't know what we're doing yet. You have Virginia. What's that little one hang? Is that part of Virginia? There's one thing I don't. Virginia, and I think that's New Hampshire. Vermont would never. Yeah, that's New Hampshire. New Hampshire and Vermont, one is upside down, one is the other way, and then Puerto Rico. And then you have the protected in yellow, and then you have expanded access in the blue. This is a much bigger problem than anybody who's riling themselves up for Barbie want to recognize. Having your access to abortion, it's not stopping there. It's turning into not teaching sex ed in school. Education, particularly education for young girls, has shown that the more education you have, the more you are able to make informed decisions about your own body. Some random man who's been in the Senate or the Congress, the House of Representatives, and seems a little, it's not doing well on TV, aka Mitch McConnell, should not be making the laws for young women in general, and femmes' rights. That's crazy. That doesn't bode well. The only way to fix this map and turn this map to more blue, as in blue here is represented from protecting women's rights, particularly the right to abortion here, is going to be actual activism, actual getting up. You could tweet about Barbie. You can tweet about this. You can go and make a story about how you're so riled up about Barbie. You could write an article about Barbie. Hillary Clinton, so I'm like, Hillary, you have more important things to do, please. Even Hillary Clinton in her Instagram story made an Instagram story saying, you know what, Margot and Greta, you're enough to me. Hillary, please focus your mind. Focus your mind. Because part of this is also your fault. Focus your mind. This makes no sense. Everybody needs to do something, because we are going to be in a state where all of a sudden everything is red. Everything is red. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm not a fan of her. Hillary war criminal Barbie. Listen, child. Oh, so much mess to discuss that we won't even discuss it all in here. So I say that to say, there are more important things to be doing than be screaming at the top of our lungs that 8 nominations are not enough for Barbie. Because this map is much more bleak than I think people realize. And we have here, Texas is one of the largest states in this country. Everybody cannot afford to live on the coast, particularly when you're looking at the South and which states are the most affected. These are states that also have more people closer to the poverty line. These are states where people also are not making enough money to even support themselves, much less be forced to support a child. Listen, enough of this. So, with that, let's go through some comments. And I'm pretty efficient, 45 minutes. All right. Yes, that's a good point. This also, I think April is talking about the reference to the planes. This is also what happens when all the corporate backed deregulation during the Trump presidency. Exactly. Also, it should be noted, people, one of the requests was to talk about the rolling back of child labor laws. That also ties into limiting people's access to reproductive rights, access to sex education, etc. You have states now rolling back laws saying high school students can on weekdays work 8-hour night shifts. You can't feasibly be able to go to school and work an 8-hour shift. And the people this affects are already the people who are most vulnerable. This is not affecting upper middle class white children who can afford to just go to school and be a kid. This is affecting people who, because their parents unfortunately work in places that they don't have enough money, can't support their family, they're now trying to help. This also has caused issues in certain, I'm not going to say the states, I don't remember, certain states that have meat processing plants where a child has already lost their limb. And in another one, an immigrant child already died. Because largely they are also taking advantage of what's also occurring, which is the migrant crisis as well. You're taking advantage of everybody, which none of it changes unless we, stop being, what is the word? Stop being confused and used and riled up about things that really don't matter. All right. Yes, yeah. It's beyond insensitive, it's silly. So to Naya's point, telling people to move doesn't work either. I hate when people say that. If you don't have the money, where are you going to move to? And that's also back to this idea of people really and truly, to their detriment, for some odd reason, still are like, I'll just pull myself up by the bootstraps. Child, you don't got no shoes on. Except that you don't have any shoes on. You are never going to be Bezos. You should never aspire to be Bezos. And commotion is occurring. All right. And I'll take William for the last point. Those governors are pro-cash, not pro-life. Exactly. By having more people being able to extract labor from them, and by also lowering the barrier to entry for children to work and operate heavy machinery, which children should not be working. They're also in some states allowing children to serve alcohol. Children should not be in an area where you have belligerent drunk people, and be in an area where they're supposed to be of service. People are going to act a fool with them. It's not safe. It doesn't make any sense. So I appreciate y'all. If you have any requests, make sure you leave them in the comments and I will put them on our list. All right. We covered Texas v. USA and the border dispute. I did not know that this was occurring, so I will put it on the list, Naya. Texas v. USA. Because Texas is such. When I learned about the Texas power grid and how Texas is the only state in the United States that's not connected to our national power grid, that's when I realized Texas required a lot of additional learning to understand how the hell did any of that happen. Because, Texas has taken states' rights to a level that few other states have taken. So, and it never ends well for actual Texans, which unfortunate. But yeah, so I appreciate y'all. Don't forget to like, subscribe, or if you're unhappy, you could dislike. That's all right. And I'll catch y'all. I want to try do our live streams on Wednesdays, but if there's no topics, like last week we didn't do one, there wasn't anything worth talking about. So I don't want to, just talk on here and then just add to the doom scrolling. So for the most part, we'll try do at least 3 a month live streams. So on that note, I appreciate y'all and I'll catch y'all next week. Hopefully.